Toma was once a noble knight who met his demise battling demons. Yet fate granted him a strange rebirth, not as a man, but as an S-rank behemoth. Or so says his status screen. The twist? He looks exactly like a regular cat. Although grateful for the second shot at life, Toma wrestles with the irony of becoming the very type of creature he once hunted. Lost in thought over his monstrous reincarnation, Toma notices a slow-moving E-rank slime inching toward him. It's clear the slime sees him as prey. Reacting quickly, Toma pulls up his status screen to select a defensive ability. He unlocks a rock projectile attack and uses it to blast the slime, killing it instantly. Victory brings him relief, along with hunger. Realizing he hasn't eaten since waking in this new world, Toma decides to taste the slime. To his surprise, it's delicious. Even more shocking, consuming monsters seems to grant him their powers. From the slime, he gains a handy item storage skill. Encouraged by this unexpected advantage, Toma chooses to explore the dungeon further. As a supposed S-rank, none of the creatures he encounters, golems, snakes, or even minotaurs, stand a chance. He slays and devours them, stacking up new skills as he goes. Being a cat-shaped monster suddenly doesn't seem so bad, and Toma begins to enjoy his bizarre new life. Elsewhere, at the dungeon's entrance, a voluptuous elf girl shows up, ready to begin her day of adventuring. Meanwhile, Toma stumbles upon a treasure chest in the middle of a room. Excited to finally experience the thrill of treasure hunting, he hurries to open it. Inside, he finds a giant gemstone, but the celebration is short-lived. The chest wasn't a mimic, but it was still a trap. Without warning, Toma is teleported to a secret boss chamber. There, he finds himself on the back of an earth dragon. Unlike the weaker creatures he's fought, this beast is also an S-rank, meaning this fight won't be easy. The dragon sneers, amused by his presence, and threatens to crush the intruder. But Toma, still adjusting to life as a magical creature and barely an hour old, refuses to give up. He tries his rock attack again, but it harmlessly bounces off the dragon's sturdy scales, ricocheting into the ceiling and creating a hole. The dragon slashes at him in retaliation, and Toma activates an iron body skill to survive the blow. Though protected, the attack leaves him heavily wounded. The dragon, impressed by his endurance, calls him persistent but ultimately doomed. As she prepares to end it, Toma taps into a newly unlocked flight ability, dodging upward through the hole. But before escaping, he slashes her eye with his tail, a desperate move that gives him just enough of an edge to flee with his life. Severely injured and rapidly losing blood, Toma struggles to escape the dungeon in search of a safe spot to recover. Just as he nears the exit, his strength gives out and he collapses. As he lies motionless and helpless, he hears footsteps approaching from around the corner. Fearing the worst, Toma braces himself to be finished off, only to discover it's the same voluptuous elf girl he encountered earlier. Seeing Toma's fragile form sprawled on the ground, she rushes over without hesitation. Hours later, Toma regains consciousness in a cozy bed, his wounds expertly treated. Disoriented, he tries to understand where he is, until the elf girl walks in holding a bowl of milk. Recognizing her face, Toma is awestruck by her striking beauty and can't help but mentally praise her very generous proportions. She expresses relief at seeing him awake, remarking how close he came to death. She's baffled by how a tiny feline like him ended up in such a perilous dungeon in the first place. Toma quickly figures out that she believes he's just a normal house cat rather than the powerful S-rank creature he truly is. Since he can't speak, he has no way of correcting her. But even if he could, why bother? Her misunderstanding earns him a spot on her legendary pillow every night. Over the following weeks, Iria nurses Toma back to full health with care and dedication. When the day comes for Iria to resume her dungeon expeditions, Toma reflects on everything she's done for him, healing his wounds, feeding him, and offering warmth and affection without expecting anything in return. Filled with gratitude, he silently vows to protect her at any cost. To keep her safe, he decides to follow her into the dungeon in secret. Sneaking onto the transport, he hides quietly until they arrive. Once inside, Toma keeps his distance, carefully watching Iria from the shadows. He worries she might end up in a ridiculous predicament, like getting her clothes melted off by a slime or something equally absurd. Ready for any disaster, he stays alert and prepares to leap into action. But his nerves ease when Iria encounters a group of goblins. Activating her acceleration ability, she makes short work of them, striking with surgical precision. Once the threat is handled, she kneels down to collect goblin ears for the bounty. Toma, witnessing her in action, is genuinely impressed. With his past experience as a knight, he can clearly see how refined and deadly her swordsmanship is. As she finishes bagging the ears, she spots one more goblin lurking nearby. Though she's already filled her quota for the day, if it chooses to attack, she's more than ready to strike it down. What Iria doesn't yet realize is that this particular goblin isn't just any ordinary creature, it's a goblin mage. Before she has time to react, it hurls a blazing fireball straight at her. Caught off guard by such a powerful attack, Iria is placed in immediate danger. Watching it unfold, Toma knows he can't let her get hurt. But if he uses any of his true abilities, he risks exposing himself as something more than just a normal cat, something he's not ready to reveal. Acting on instinct, Toma shoves Iria out of harm's way and charges at the goblin mage. With a clean swipe of his seemingly harmless kitty claws, Toma sends the goblin tumbling backward. It stumbles down the dungeon steps and meets its end. Iria is left in disbelief. How did Toma get here, and why is he fighting? But in the moment, all that matters is her gratitude. On the boat ride back to town, she rewards him by letting him curl up on her generous chest, giving him affectionate belly rubs, which, to his surprise, he finds himself growing dangerously fond of. Once back in town, Iria heads to the Adventurers Guild to turn in the goblin ears she collected. As she makes her way to the reception, she's intercepted by Lord Casmin, an all-too-familiar face she's been deliberately avoiding. As usual, Casmin tries to recruit her for his party, but Iria politely turns him down, well aware of his unsavory reputation. Still, Casmin pushes, ignoring her clear refusal. In true scumbag fashion, Casmin reaches out, aiming for a double-handed grope of her cheeks. Before his hands get close, though, Toma strikes, sinking his teeth into Casmin's hand and refusing to let go. Casmin yelps in pain, thrashing wildly, but Toma hangs on like a fury-fueled vice. When Casmin finally manages to fling Toma off, the cat flips through the air and lands right on his face, unleashing a flurry of claws before gracefully returning to Iria's chest. Fuming and embarrassed, Casmin goes for his sword, ready to retaliate. But before he can unsheath it, the guildmaster, Arnold Schwarzenegger, better known as Anna, grabs the weapon mid-draw. She coldly reminds him that guild rules forbid pulling weapons over personal grudges, especially against a cat, and warns of serious consequences if he continues. Defeated by her authority, Casmin backs down and storms out of the guild. Iria thanks Arnold for the timely save, but Anna just shrugs it off and compliments Toma on his quick reaction. Iria proceeds to the counter, where Arnold logs the goblin ears, marking her quest as complete. Later, Iria finds a seat to relax, with Toma lounging on her lap. She tickles his belly, a peaceful moment between them, until her fingers wander a bit too low, brushing places she probably shouldn't. The way she looks at him afterward reveals a little too much excitement for comfort. When it's time for a bath, Iria insists Toma join her. Though he protests, holding on to his chivalrous principles from his past life as a knight, Iria has other ideas. Despite his resistance, Toma ends up in the bath with her anyway. While they relax in the bath, Iria starts opening up about her past. She shares with Toma how her village was almost wiped out by demons years ago, only to be saved at the last moment by a heroic figure wielding the legendary blade known as Alicia. Ever since that day, Iria has been determined to become just as brave and powerful as the warrior who rescued them. The following morning, Iria heads to the guild alongside Toma. As they walk through the town, Toma observes how warmly the townspeople greet her. It's clear that Iria is beloved by everyone, her presence brings smiles, and people speak to her with genuine affection. Upon arriving at the guild, Iria greets Arnold at the front desk with her usual cheerfulness. But Arnold's demeanor changes instantly. His tone turns grave as he warns her that today isn't the best time to be around, and urges her to leave right away. Before Iria can react, however, Casmin saunters into the guild with smug satisfaction plastered across his face. He loudly declares that after being scratched by her cat, he reported the incident to the Baron, and the Baron responded by issuing a direct order: Toma must be put down. Iria is devastated. Though Toma hasn't been with her long, he's already become incredibly important to her. The idea of losing him is unbearable. She drops to her knees, begging Casmin to reconsider. He smirks, clearly enjoying her despair, and presents her with a twisted proposal: a duel. If Iria wins, Toma is spared. But if she loses, she must agree to marry him. The conditions are outrageous. Not only is Casmin a more seasoned adventurer, but the stakes are entirely in his favor. Still, faced with no better choice, Iria accepts. The battle starts quickly. Casmin lands a brutal kick to Iria's side, knocking her to the ground. As she rises, he mocks her, praising her reflexes but dismissing them as inadequate. Iria changes strategy, throwing a barrage of daggers in his direction. But his enchanted cape, resistant to blades, renders the attack useless. He bats the knives away effortlessly. He then rushes in, striking fast and hard with his sword. Iria struggles to hold her ground, but she's ultimately disarmed, leaving her exposed and defenseless. At that moment, it seems like all hope has vanished. Toma watches helplessly, torn. If he intervenes, everyone will know the truth about what he really is. But if he stays back, Iria will lose everything. As Casmin lifts his sword to force Iria's surrender, Toma makes his choice. He charges forward and activates his iron body ability, stepping between the blade and Iria. The impact shatters Casmin's weapon, leaving him dumbfounded. Without hesitation, Toma lets out a thunderous howl attack, launching Casmin into a grove of trees. By sheer bad luck, or poetic justice, the fragments of his broken sword follow the same path and land directly where it hurts most, between Casmin's legs. Suffice it to say, his already bad day just got infinitely worse. Gasps ripple through the crowd, unable to process what just unfolded before their eyes. They're certain they witnessed the cat perform feats no regular pet should be capable of. Toma had foreseen this outcome. He knew that by acting, he'd expose his true nature. He's fully aware it won't be long before the audience begins to suspect what he really is. And once they do, there's a good chance they'll turn on him. Still, Toma feels no remorse. His only priority was keeping Iria safe, and in that mission, he succeeded. Cautiously, Iria and Arnold step closer, their expressions filled with awe and disbelief. They start speculating about what Toma might be. But instead of jumping to the conclusion that he's some kind of monster, they land on another idea. Perhaps he's an elemental cat, an extremely rare and magical being. Toma, caught off guard by the assumption, silently marvels at his incredible stroke of luck. With a grin, Arnold announces Iria as the duel's winner. And just like that, things settle down, at least, as much as they can when your life involves being an overwhelmingly powerful cat with the world's most legendary and coziest cushion. The following morning, Iria attempts to coax Toma out of bed with some affectionate snuggling, but the mischievous kitten playfully nips at her ear, leaving her bright red and flustered. As someone who once upheld the code of a noble knight, Toma quickly pulls away to avoid making things more awkward and hops off the bed. Still, Iria keeps calling after him, her voice carrying an oddly emotional tone that makes Toma feel even more uncomfortable. A little later, Iria brings Toma along to the local blacksmith's forge to meet her friend, Vulcan. The moment they arrive, Vulcan can't keep her eyes off Toma, clearly taken in by how adorable he is. As Iria shares a few stories about Toma, Vulcan eagerly asks if she can hold him. Toma seems quite pleased as Vulcan lifts him up and gushes over his cuteness. But Iria gently steers the conversation to the real reason they came. She needs Vulcan to craft armor for Toma. Vulcan is absolutely thrilled by the request and jumps at the chance to create something so special. Without wasting any time, she starts taking Toma's measurements, promising to design armor that suits him perfectly. As she works, Iria leans down and quietly asks Toma if he's ready to head off on an adventure. Toma responds with an enthusiastic nod, his tail twitching with excitement. While the two make their preparations, Vulcan is completely immersed in her task, treating the project like it's the most important thing she's ever done. In less than 10 minutes, she proudly reveals the finished armor, and it's nothing short of exceptional. Toma looks striking in the new gear, and it fits like a glove. Still, Vulcan admits there's another issue she hasn't solved: Iria's sword. Despite reforging it numerous times, she can't seem to reduce the weight, making it hard for Iria to use effectively in combat. After giving it some thought, Vulcan proposes they form a temporary party. That way, she can watch Iria fight firsthand and figure out how to fix the problem. The group sets off into the dungeon that very day, where Vulcan immediately shows her power by crushing the grotesque goblins that cross their path. Iria watches in awe, clearly impressed by Vulcan's raw strength and fierce fighting style. Toma, too, sees her as both brave and incredibly talented. Her abilities shine even more when she blocks a magical fire attack using a skill tied to her forging craft. Vulcan explains that her technique lets her coat her armor in different elemental properties, giving her great flexibility during fights. With the immediate threats gone, Vulcan steps aside and tells Iria it's her turn to handle the next opponent. Their next enemy is a repulsive, giant orc, its monstrous appearance enough to unsettle anyone. But Iria charges in without hesitation. She activates her speed-enhancing ability and tries to land a hit, but the orc parries her strikes with surprising skill. That's when Toma jumps into action, leaping high and using his iron body skill to block a powerful blow, giving Iria the opening she needs. Wasting no time, she strikes and defeats the orc with a clean, decisive attack. Vulcan closely watches Iria as she fights, noticing how her longsword disrupts the flow of her movements, making her attacks less precise. Displeased with how she's performing, Iria turns to Vulcan and demands a more difficult challenge, driven by her desire to improve and grow. Admiring her determination, Vulcan tells her to proceed to the next floor, promising that even harder trials await. As they go deeper, instead of facing hulking beasts, they are surrounded by a group of slippery, lecherous roppers. Toma immediately panics, worried these slimy things might wrap their tendrils all over his mistress. Vulcan quickly advises Iria to stay sharp and not let herself get caught in their sticky clutches. Iria bursts forward with incredible speed, but the roppers prove too agile. Her sword swings miss their marks, and one of the creatures even manages to break her heavy blade, leaving her exposed. Just as one of them lunges at her, Vulcan throws her a dagger. She snatches it from the air and drives it straight into the monster's core, killing it in one clean motion. Energized by the success, she turns to face the others. Vulcan, analyzing her movements, realizes Iria is far more deadly when using lightweight, short-blade weapons rather than the cumbersome long sword. Before long, Iria begins cleaving through the creatures with blinding speed, astonishing Vulcan. She had known Iria was talented, but this level of precision and velocity catches her off guard. Just when they think they're done, one of the roppers suddenly explodes its goo all over Iria while regenerating. Disgusted, Iria snarls, claiming only Toma is allowed to touch her like that. Enraged, she unleashes a brutal attack, slicing the thing into pieces so fine that it has no chance of coming back. As Vulcan moves in to compliment her, Toma halts halfway, sneakily drawing some fluid from the creature to absorb its ability. Still steaming with rage, Iria lashes out at the ropper's remains, stabbing it again and again while muttering about vengeance. Toma looks on, slightly concerned, unsure if she's gone too far. After the carnage, Iria finally speaks with Vulcan, sharing the story of why she chose to wield a longsword in the first place. She recounts meeting the Sword Saint as a child, a legendary figure she looked up to and aspired to imitate. Even though the longsword never quite suited her natural talent, she trained relentlessly with it for years, trying to live up to that ideal. But now, with her newfound clarity, Aria decides it's time to step into her own strength and fully embrace the weapons that truly fit her. Toma listens closely, offering words of reassurance to Aria, telling her that this change will ultimately empower her. Seeing how much Aria has progressed, Vulcan suggests they delve into a more dangerous level of the dungeon, trusting that Aria is now ready to face tougher enemies with her twin blades. Before continuing, the group pauses to rest beside a Philosopher's Stone, a rare relic known for warding off monsters in its range. As they take a breather, Aria's eyes lock onto the stone, which stirs up haunting memories from her past, moments when demons ravaged her hometown. Lost in reflection, she barely registers Vulcan's worried glance. When Vulcan gently asks if something's bothering her, Aria waves it off and swiftly redirects the conversation. Meanwhile, Toma splashes playfully in a nearby pool, thoroughly enjoying himself. Watching Amma's antics, Aria decides to join the fun, slipping out of her protective gear and unknowingly giving Toma a full view of what's usually hidden. Vulcan eventually joins in as well, and the trio enjoys a relaxing swim. Despite the calm, Toma struggles to keep his mind off certain, classified visuals he wasn't supposed to see. While they unwind, Aria casually brings up her old dungeon crew, accidentally poking at a touchy topic. Vulcan reveals that her former team split up after 2 members fell in love, and the woman's pregnancy led the couple to retire from adventuring. The conversation takes an odd turn when Vulcan casually brings up that elemental felines like Toma are capable of crossbreeding, joking about what could happen once Toma matures and enters a strong mating phase. To Toma's horror, Aria lights up with excitement at the thought, urging Toma to hurry and grow big so she can one day have his cute little meow meow kittens. That thought alone has Toma mentally screaming, wondering what kind of bizarre world he's landed in. With their break over, the group advances to the next dungeon level, where they're soon confronted by a towering minotaur, far deadlier than the goblins and tentacled creatures they've faced so far. Aria dashes forward with caution, unleashing her signature whirlwind slash. But the attack merely grazes the creature's tough hide, causing her confidence to falter. Vulcan quickly steps in to bolster her spirit, helping Aria steady herself. Fueled by Vulcan's faith in her, Aria charges again, delivering a flurry of sharper and quicker attacks. The Minotaur, caught off guard by her relentless speed, swings its massive weapon wildly in defense. One of its strikes smashes the ceiling, sending chunks of rock plummeting toward Vulcan. Toma acts instantly, activating his Ether Howling ability to blast the debris away, shielding Vulcan at the last second. His quick thinking spurs Aria into action. Spotting an opening, she lunges in and lands a decisive blow to the monster's chest, ending the fight. As Toma lets out a victorious cheer, Vulcan stares at him with admiration, impressed by the small cat's heart and heroism. Her mind drifts as she can't help but think that Toma has an incredibly commanding presence. Meanwhile, back at the Adventurers Guild, Aria, Vulcan, and Toma turn in the spoils they collected during their dungeon exploration. They soon meet with Arnold, who takes note of the deep lacerations on the Minotaur remains and curiously asks who delivered such powerful blows. With a confident grin, Vulcan explains that the wounds were caused by Aria's newly refined combat skills. Arnold, remembering Aria's initial struggles when she first came to town, praises her impressive progress and determination. Aria, touched by the compliment, responds with genuine appreciation, feeling proud of how far she's come. With their reward secured, the trio heads to a nearby tavern to enjoy a celebratory meal. Once there, Vulcan eagerly dives into several rounds of drinks, amusing Toma, who finds himself wondering if she's a seasoned drinker. Aria takes a moment to sincerely thank Vulcan for her support during the mission, admitting that she genuinely enjoyed fighting alongside her. Vulcan agrees, happily pulling out a rare healing herb she picked up during the dungeon crawl as a souvenir. The warmth of their conversation triggers a wave of nostalgia in Toma, reminding him of the camaraderie he once shared with fellow adventurers in his past life. Even so, he reflects that his current life isn't bad at all. After all, living as the adored pet of a beautiful elf isn't something to complain about. As the bond between them grows, Vulcan brings up the idea of forming a proper adventuring party. Caught off guard, Aria is touched by the offer but feels too shy to respond right away. Sensing her hesitation, Toma gently bites her hand and places it on Vulcan's, symbolically agreeing on her behalf. The trio bursts into laughter and cheer, officially forming their party. Riding the wave of friendship, they order more drinks and decide to make the night unforgettable. Later that evening, Toma finds himself caught between Aria and Vulcan's thick plot armor. The melodramatic tension doesn't help his sleep, especially when Aria mutters in her sleep about hoping Toma won't be too wild. Flustered and slightly suspicious, he tries to ignore it and refocus. Needing something to do, Toma opens his status menu and is surprised to find that he can now evolve. However, evolving may mean becoming an enormous beast, which could force him to part ways with Aria and Vulcan. Choosing heart over strength, Toma decides to stay just as he is, their loyal and trusted companion. The next morning, while out and about, Aria and Toma come across 2 shady men bullying a young girl, accusing her of being a thief. Aria steps in at once, and once the men notice her elemental feline, they quickly back off. She gently reassures the girl and learns she's an orphan, then brings her to a nearby chapel that cares for abandoned children. Hearing Aria's kind and sincere words with the nuns, Toma is moved by his master's compassion and silently pledges to be by her side more than ever before. That evening, Arnold summoned Aria to the Adventurers Guild to congratulate her on advancing to C rank. He presented her with a polished new pendant to mark the achievement, but their celebration was cut short by a disturbance near the quest board. Arnold then shared that people had vanished in Linren, a nearby town where rumors of demonic involvement were spreading. Upon hearing this, Aria's determination flared. Fueled by her hatred for demons, she immediately sought more details and expressed her desire to take on the urgent quest without hesitation. She pressed Arnold for everything he knew regarding the strange disappearances. Vulcan grew uneasy with how eager the elf was to charge ahead, questioning whether she was truly ready. Yet Aria stood firm, unwilling to let more innocents suffer. Impressed by her resolve, Vulcan offered his assistance, and Arnold remarked that it wouldn't be long before the two were scouted by a mercenary guild. Just then, a young man in a simple tunic entered the guild. He introduced himself as Cedric, and the adventurers quickly recognized him as the Duke's firstborn, famed for his expertise in labyrinth warfare. Cedric greeted Vulcan with familiarity and told Aria he looked forward to fighting alongside her. Thomas suddenly recalled Cedric from the Great War, Ragnarok, when humanity clashed with demons. Though many lives were lost, the battle ended in victory thanks to a gifted young mage, the Grand Mage, whose leadership earned him legendary status. Aria, though excited, grew nervous about their small party facing such grave dangers. Arnold, clearly impressed by Cedric's charisma, reassured her, claiming Cedric could inspire confidence in anyone. As Aria leaned into him playfully, Arnold reminded her to keep her affection in check while in public. Curious, Aria asked if they were a couple, and Vulcan's confirmation left Toma bewildered. Remaining silent until they got home, Toma sensed the elf's unease. Understandable, given the peril ahead alongside such a renowned warrior. The cat affectionately licked her cheek, and she responded with a kiss to his furry head. The moment caught Toma off guard, but he quickly regained focus as they prepared to set out. During their travels, new companions joined them. The silver-haired Dani, the beast-like Howard, the flame-haired Keeney, and Marietta. Aria introduced Toma, whose charm instantly melted everyone's hearts. Marietta even insisted on carrying him at times. But their quiet trek came to a sudden stop when a group of orcs blocked their path. Cedric directed Dani to confront them, and the swordsman made short work of the creatures, dispatching them without breaking a sweat. Curious, Vulcan asked about Dani's powers, and Keeney noted that he hadn't used any abilities yet. Aria was starting to realize the immense strength of the Ragnarok veterans, while Toma watched Dani with awe, thrilled by the thought of someday fighting at his side. As night fell, they arrived at Leonard Village, where the grateful locals welcomed Cedric and the team with open arms. A villager spoke up, revealing that many residents had recently vanished, with an entire search team never returning from the ruins. And another girl taken just the night before. The news stirred painful echoes of the invasion that had ravaged Aria's homeland. The village elder added that Cedric's knights might be their final chance for hope. Noticing how exhausted the warriors looked after their journey, the villagers quickly cooked a generous meal to help them recover. Later, once they were settled in their quarters, Aria's curiosity got the better of her, and she asked why each had chosen the path of a knight. Dani admitted it was due to family debt, their poverty leaving him no other way. Howard's reason echoed the same struggle. Keeney had sought money for her sister's medicine, and Marietta wanted to buy her father's freedom from slavery. Listening to these personal reasons, Toma sensed a deep sorrow behind their decisions, and Aria herself regretted asking. Yet none of the knights were ashamed of their past, they had each paid a price and were now forging their own destiny. Cedric's answer stood apart. He wasn't driven by affection or duty. As the Duke's heir, he had joined the knights simply out of lack of purpose, and found satisfaction in fighting monsters. His honesty rubbed some the wrong way, but no one objected. After supper, the group split up for a bath. While the girls enjoyed their soak, the boys, swept up in mischief, attempted to sneak a glance. Toma, ever vigilant, caught them in the act and bellowed loud enough to send Dani and Howard fleeing to their rooms. Cedric watched their frantic retreat with faint amusement, quietly pondering their excitement for the road ahead, a feeling he didn't entirely share. Refreshed, the group resumed their trek into the foreboding Leonard Labyrinth, unaware that a dark presence was tracking them. To the hidden entity, these adventurers were merely targets. He waited in silence, building his strength and preparing his ambush. Not long after, the group was confronted by a band of aquatic werewolves. Howard, acting as the team's shield, stepped forward, brandished his heavy armor, and provoked the creatures to protect his team. Cedric demonstrated flawless swordsmanship, dispatching enemies with calm efficiency. Aria joined the battle, determined not to fall behind. Toma, watching the armored beasts, considered a thunderous roar but chose a water-based technique instead. With deadly precision, he pierced one and swiftly felled two more, impressing the entire team. From the shadows, the hidden threat observed with surprise, especially at Toma's elemental abilities. Despite their clear skill, the creature understood that he couldn't permit them to continue. He began his next move, whether to send more minions or enter the fray himself. Back with the heroes, the group was left speechless by the elemental cat's prowess. Aria, clearly mesmerized, voiced her aura aloud, going as far as to joke that she wouldn't mind falling under Toma's might. Although he found her comment strange, Toma pushed back his primal urges, reminding himself that Aria remained his master. They soon stepped into a vast chamber thick with a heavy, suffocating pressure. Cedric lifted a hand to stop the others. From the darkness emerged Beryl Astaroth, ruler of the labyrinth. He announced that their progress would halt here, revealing himself as a demon survivor bent on avenging his kin. Dany quickly called him out, blaming him for the attack on Leonard Village, but Beryl brushed it off, stating that Leonard was merely the opening move in a grander scheme. With a cold grin, he summoned a band of trolls to engage them. Aware of the danger, Cedric instructed everyone to split up. Yet Beryl was ready for this, conjuring a barrier that cut Toma off from the others. One of the trolls lunged at Toma, only to have its arm ripped off by the fierce feline. To Toma's shock, the limb regrew within moments. Meanwhile, Cedric and the rest were quickly encircled, realizing their only real chance was to count on Cedric to create an escape route. Cedric then drew his sword, which pulsed with a sinister aura, and charged with a twisted grin. In a flash, he cleaved two trolls so completely that their bodies couldn't recover. Beryl's eyes widened, recognizing the forbidden energy Cedric was channeling, an ancient magic once used by the Great Mage during the Ragnarok War. Cedric gave a knowing smirk, clearly enjoying himself. Toma tried launching a stone-based attack, but the trolls barely reacted, and regenerated in seconds. Recognizing the threat, Toma pulled back, mind racing on whether to unleash his evolved form. Yet doing so would sever his connection to Iria, a cost he wasn't willing to pay. Choosing loyalty over power, Toma used Flame Roar instead, incinerating the trolls with fire intense enough to stop their regeneration. The plan worked, leaving them defeated. Beryl, furious at the setback, braced for the next round. Vulcan charged in swinging his massive hammer, but Beryl easily evaded and deflected Iria's blade with his dagger. He sneered at the sluggish hammer strikes, until Vulcan stirred up a thick dust cloud, obscuring his view. Iria took the moment to leap in and stab her enchanted dagger into Beryl's chest. Initially, he shrugged the injury off, but the dagger shone with a radiant light, worsening the damage and forcing him down. Roaring in agony, Beryl slashed back, leaving Iria with a brutal wound, far beyond a minor cut. The team scrambled to pull her back, dread rising as Toma feared the blade may have been laced with poison. Beryl, still clinging to life, lets out a sinister smirk and proclaims that humanity will fall when true strength resurfaces. As his final words hang in the air, his body slowly begins to turn to stone, crumbling into dust shortly after. Meanwhile, a deadly poison spreads swiftly through Iria's arm. Cedric examines the wound and soberly announces it to be dragon venom, a lethal toxin. Howard immediately presses his magical shield against it, hoping to slow its spread. Without wasting time, the group rushes Iria back to Leonard Village. Upon arrival, the village medic confirms their fears. Dragon venom kills in less than 2 days, and only the eye of an earth dragon can counter it. With no other options, the team discusses hunting the creature. Cedric firmly opposes the idea, saying there's no time to waste. As Iria's suffering grows, Toma, gripped by guilt and panic, leaps out the window. Flashes of the time Iria saved his life play in his mind, and he promises to return the favor, no matter the cost. He races to the ancient ruins where he had once been reborn as an elemental feline, ready to face the earth dragon he narrowly survived once before. The beast, surprised to see Toma again, sneers and mocks his previous retreat. But Toma holds his ground this time. Deep inside, he knows his current power won't be enough. Left with no other option, Toma makes a defining choice. He decides to awaken his full behemoth form, embracing his true potential to save Iria. Now towering in his massive shape, he unleashes a fiery assault on the dragon. The creature retaliates with blazing fury, lunging forward and sinking her fangs into Toma's throat, scorching him with searing heat. Though the pain is unbearable, Toma doesn't flinch, it was all a part of his strategy. He anticipated her carelessness once she attacked. As she bites, Toma retaliates, slashing her eye with his flaming blade, bursting it with a hiss like a punctured balloon. The dragon collapses at last, but Toma's energy is spent, reverting him back to his tiny feline form. There's no time for regret, Iria needs him. He quickly stores the dragon's eye in his inventory, spreads his leathery wings, and races back to her side. Back home, Iria lies unconscious, barely clinging to life. Vulcan waits beside her, tears falling as the rest of the group silently watches the painful scene. Suddenly, a loud thump from outside grabs everyone's attention. Cedric and Dany rush out to find the slain earth dragon's body, and a tiny, drained Toma lying beside it. Cedric wastes no time, shouting that they must use the dragon eye right away. As the team springs into action, Toma silently wishes for Iria's recovery, unaware that she is trapped in a terrifying vision. Within her dream, she sees her village consumed by flames and chaos. When she was just 13, Iria's village was raided by demons searching for the Philosopher's Stone, leaving devastation and death in their wake. In the chaos, a terrified young Iria tried to escape but ended up face to face with the monsters. Frozen in fear, her body trembled. Just when it seemed all hope had vanished, an elemental feline, similar in appearance to Toma, appeared and shielded her from harm. Suddenly, Iria jolts awake, the nightmare vivid as ever. It finally makes sense to her why she has always felt such a deep bond with cats. Her gaze shifts to Toma, curled up quietly beside her, and a wave of warmth and thankfulness washes over her. The next morning, everyone is relieved to see Iria in better spirits. Arnold becomes overwhelmed with emotion and bursts into uncontrollable sobs. Although the worst has passed, traces of the toxin remain, meaning Iria must take a few days to fully recover. That night, Toma quietly slips into the forest, eager to put his strength to the test. Since his encounter with the Earth Dragon, he's been puzzling over the mechanics behind his evolving powers. Though his gigantic form has faded, new abilities inherited from the dragon have emerged. Upon spotting a gigantic buffalo-like beast, Toma uses this opportunity to try out his dragon claw and fang abilities. In a blur of speed and power, he brings the creature down with ease, stunned by how much his strength has grown. But then, the rustle of light footsteps alerts him. A mysterious woman steps from the shadows, her worn clothes and graceful features sharply contrast her eerie presence. What's unsettling is how she speaks directly to Toma, referring to him as the strong one, as if they've met before. Stranger still, she slyly steals a piece of his armor, giving the impression she's been tracking him. She then interrogates him about his fervent form and suddenly bursts into a manic chase, raving about his powerful physique and lunging to grab him. Horrified, Toma screeches and bolts toward a narrow opening, barely slipping away from her grasp. Her deranged behavior deeply unsettles him, but he manages to flee. Back at the cottage, Toma snuggles beside Iria, still fast asleep, seeking solace in her arms. Even as he dozes off, a sense of unease lingers. Something about that wild woman felt oddly familiar. The next day, Iria playfully dresses Toma in a frilly, soft linen outfit, making him look irresistibly cute. The two set off on a picnic, and Iria lays out a small feast. She offers Toma a handful of fresh berries as they enjoy the peaceful setting. As they talk, Iria brings up the Earth Dragon, remembering how they had discovered Toma battered and bruised beside its remains. She then reminisces about her past, asking if he remembers the story she once told. She revisits the memory of the demon invasion on her home, Lumineers, and how an elemental cat saved her from certain death. Eventually, the village was spared by the arrival of the Sword Saint, who vanquished the demons alone. Inspired by that day, Iria pledged to grow stronger and left her family behind, determined to return one day as a mighty warrior. Iria's voice quivers as she opens up about always being the one rescued, by Vulcan, by Sephiroth's team, and even Toma. As tears begin to form, she confesses her frustration. She made a promise to protect her allies and her people, yet it constantly feels like she's the one being shielded. In response, Toma quickly stands and moves to comfort her, gently helping her wipe her tears away. She realizes the point he's making, there's no reason to feel ashamed. After all, she was the one who brought down Beryl and earned that victory. Later on, she and Toma head to visit Vulcan, who announces that the armor Iria commissioned is finally ready. Thanks to the hefty reward she got for defeating Beryl, and by selling off the loot Toma gathered from the trolls, she'd managed to earn a solid sum. Iria had poured all of it into buying top-tier armor. Though pricey, Vulcan firmly states that no amount of gold can match her safety. The new gear is both stylish and battle-ready, and Iria can't help but jump with excitement. She bounces around gleefully, amazed by how light and comfortable the armor feels. Vulcan begins detailing the effort behind each part of the set, but Toma simply sits nearby, silently admiring how stunning his master looks dressed for combat. They decide to head out together to give the armor a field test. When they enter a tunnel, the mood shifts. It's been a while since Iria stepped into such dark places. Toma hops down from her shoulder and activates Lion King's blessing, granting both her and Vulcan resistance against fire and frost. Iria lights up, charmed by how cute he is when he does that. Soon, an ogre blocks their path, and Iria doesn't hesitate. With blazing speed, she dashes forward, surprising even Vulcan by not activating any skills. In one clean motion, she severs the beast's head, giving it no chance to strike back. She cheers, proud of the armor and her newly bought daggers, but the celebration doesn't last. Toma goes still, picking up on an eerie presence nearby. From the shadows emerges a strange woman muttering cryptically about fate and searching for Toma. Iria, puzzled, asks if she's a lost adventurer from Ruin, but the woman claims no ties to such a place. Instead, she claims to be born from darkness itself, stretching her hand toward Toma with desperation. Vulcan guesses she might be suffering memory loss, but her words quickly spiral into madness. She begins revealing disturbing secrets and abruptly demands Toma father her child. Iria stays composed, brushing her off with a calm but firm response that Toma is merely a kitten. Horrified, Toma darts into Iria's arms for protection. The woman's anger escalates as she accuses Iria of stealing and domesticating Toma. Even so, Iria remains kind, offering to let the woman join them, thinking it's safer than leaving her alone where worse fates could find her. Iria gently assures Toma that he'll be safe, and after a moment of hesitation, the wild woman nods, realizing this might be her only opportunity to remain by his side. During their return, they discuss giving her a name. Though the girl seems indifferent, Iria points toward a distant star and suggests the name Stella, explaining it means beautiful in her native language. With even Toma appearing to approve, the woman shrugs and accepts the name Stella. Back at their home, the first challenge is to clean her up. She grumbles about how long it'll take, but Iria is determined to scrub her thoroughly. Once the bath is over, Stella feels refreshed and springs to her feet, fascinated by the cleaning stone used. Vulcan corrects her, telling her it's called soap. Caught up in the excitement, she dives into the pool with a splash, acting like a carefree child. Soon after, Iria calls Toma over to clean his small paws. Watching this, Stella becomes instantly envious. She loudly complains about the unfairness and insists on washing Toma herself. Iria refuses without losing her composure, stating it's her right as Toma's caretaker. Later that night, Toma is awakened by Stella calling out to him through telepathy. He looks over to see her silently staring at him, her presence eerie. They're somehow communicating mind to mind. Stella brings up the moment Toma once struck her down, leaving him confused until she refers to the labyrinth. That's when he pieces it together. She was once the mighty earth dragon. Stella explains that she was born with overwhelming power, untouched by other creatures until Toma defeated her by destroying her eye. After her fall, she was reborn, fragile, tattered, and in a new form, just like Toma had been. As her former self was dying, she made a vow to reunite with him, and upon reincarnation, she chased that purpose without hesitation. Toma, now tense and uncertain, asks if she seeks vengeance. But instead, Stella says her intentions are even more intense. Calmly, she declares that she's given herself to him completely, no longer seeking battle. Her only desire now is to carry his offspring, leaving Toma stunned. She confesses with heated emotion that Toma is the only male she's ever considered strong enough to captivate her heart. Then, without delay, Stella pounces on him, her goal obvious, until Iria intervenes at the last second, yanking Toma out of reach. Stella collapses in shame, trembling in a corner. Iria, now stern, reprimands her and tells her to stay away from Toma. She then turns and quietly returns to bed. Yet as Toma tries to get some rest, he can still hear Stella whispering ominously in the dark, making it clear she won't give up trying to reach him. Toma the next morning, Arya treated Stella to breakfast. Tasting freshly made food for the first time, Stella nearly lost herself in joy before quickly regaining her composure and slipping into an inner chat with Toma. After their meal, Arya led her on a walk around the town, hoping familiar sights might trigger some of the memories Stella claimed she had forgotten. Unfortunately, the only clear image Stella could recall was Toma jumping into her golden gloves, a mystery she was determined to understand above all else. This led Toma to realize that Stella seemed to view Arya as the more capable one between them. Arya then suggested that Stella register as an adventurer, believing it could give her new direction. To get her ready, they visited Vulcan's workshop to address her equipment issues. Both Arya and Vulcan were a bit unsure about Stella's choice of attire, which looked like it came straight from a flashy Ormlifans catalogue, but Stella loved the snug fit and how it kept her assets comfortable. Arya then focused on helping Stella pick out a proper weapon. Stella, however, brushed off their concern and revealed her half-dragon powers, showing she still carried immense strength from her past self. They tried out multiple weapons until she chose an oversized shield made for giants. Toma, curious, asked why she didn't go with a sword alone, and Stella replied that her loss to him taught her how vital defense truly was. Pleased with her decision, she paired the shield with a blade and prepared to test them both in a dungeon. Arya assigned Toma to watch her during combat. But before Vulcan could outline a plan, Stella had already charged ahead and ran into 3 goblins enjoying a break. Alarmed, the goblins attacked, and Arya and Vulcan yelled at her to fall back, but she paid no attention. She raised her shield and drew her sword, then activated her dragon claws, tearing through 2 goblins instantly. The last goblin went for a sneak attack, but Stella snatched her blade mid-air and ended it with one devastating blow. Arya and Vulcan stood stunned, barely able to process the overwhelming power they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, Toma quietly noted that Stella's rebirth hadn't weakened her powers in the slightest. With no enemies left in sight, Stella grumbled about wanting tougher opponents. The team then agreed to head deeper into the dungeon and eventually encountered a pair of orcs. Wasting no time, Stella crushed the first one against the wall with brutal force. The second orc hesitated, clearly sensing its fate, but Stella didn't give it a chance to escape. She took it down quickly, leaving the hallway soaked in gore. Inspired by her momentum, the party pushed further into the dungeon's depths. Eventually, the group made their way into a section swarming with gooey, bacteria-like creatures. Before Arya could issue a warning, Stella dove into the fray without hesitation. Her overconfidence was short-lived, though, as the creature's slimy appendages coiled around her, sending an uncomfortable jolt through her. Toma stepped in quickly, using the moment to highlight the dangers of underestimating such enemies, especially the risk to her assets. This fired Stella up, causing her to charge forward recklessly. But the blobs retaliated swiftly, snatching her weapon and coating her in a thick, sticky substance. The unexpected ambush overwhelmed Stella, prompting Arya and Vulcan to rush to her aid. Toma, meanwhile, noticed something off. Stella's strange reaction seemed linked to her draconic instincts. Activating one of his own tentacle-based abilities, Toma bound both her and the blobs in place before releasing a torrent of pressurized water that obliterated the enemies, bringing the bizarre encounter to an end. Regaining her senses, Stella was left feeling embarrassed by her lack of control. With a calm voice, Toma comforted her, assuring her that he'd protect her next time. His genuine promise stirred something deep inside Stella, causing her dragon instincts to flare up once again. Her body reacted by releasing a fresh burst of dragon slime. Realizing she had much to learn, Stella accepted Vulcan's offer to train her further, determined to rise as a valuable team member. As they spoke, Stella's mind drifted to warriors she had once faced in another life, recalling how formidable they had become through teamwork. Inspired by that memory, she felt a rush of excitement, eager to reach those heights with her current allies. Just then, Arya found herself lost in her own thoughts. Turning toward Toma, she blurted out a bold request, asking him to test his tentacle skill on her cannons. The absurdity left Toma frozen in shock, completely blindsided by the statement. Before he could react, Arya had already begun to strip down without shame. Thankfully, Vulcan stepped in at the last moment, managing to restrain her before things escalated beyond repair. Regrouping afterward, the party continued their journey through the dungeon, keeping an eye out for their next target. They paused soon after to assess Stella's combat role within the group. With her physical power and high durability, it was unanimously agreed that Stella would take the front line, both as a wall and a spearhead. Soon enough, they crossed paths with a squad of orcs. Without hesitation, Stella took point, using her shield to bait the creatures into combat. One particularly aggressive orc charged her, but she reacted in a flash, slicing off its arm with a swift, precise blow. As she moved in to finish the job, fear overtook the wounded creature, and it bolted in terror. Stella, not one to let enemies slip away, immediately gave chase with fierce determination. Meanwhile, Toma activated his magical support skill, unintentionally amplifying both Arya and Vulcan's spell work, along with Arya's growing fixation on his eggplant. Together, they swept through every last monster in their path until they arrived at a tranquil dungeon hot spring. Without hesitation, they decided to take a break. What followed was pure turmoil for Toma, who battled his own thoughts while the girls shamelessly paraded their assets, testing the limits of his self-control. Things took a turn when Arya, bold as ever, nestled Toma against her chest, insisting he belonged there to unwind. Refusing to be outshone, Stella pressed her impressive dragon curves against Arya's, sparking an all-out rivalry for Toma's favor. Fully convinced that Arya fell short, Stella proclaimed she was better suited to care for Toma. Naturally, Arya wasn't about to let that slide, and their back and forth soon turned into a fiery standoff. Vulcan, trapped in the middle, attempted to calm them down. She proposed that Stella consider the role of Toma's secondary partner, a suggestion that only added fuel to the already burning fire. Their melon clash intensified so much that the resulting impact sent Toma crashing into the ceiling, left to contemplate the absurd path his life had taken. Eventually, they returned to the guild to have Stella meet Arnold. Before registering her as a formal adventurer, Arnold introduced the party to a man named Reese, who had a special request. He explained that he was setting out on a long journey and needed a strong group to protect a rare item. When Arya asked what the item was, Reese replied that it wasn't something he could disclose in public. He guided them to a secured vault, unveiling the object in question, the remains of Stella's dragon form, much to her shock. Reese elaborated that these bones once belonged to a beast that had stood against formidable foes. That aura of defiance is exactly what caught the eye of the buyer, leading him to acquire the remains without delay. As Stella stood silently before the skeleton, Toma reached out to her telepathically. She admitted that seeing it stirred something deep within her, a painful memory of her own end, and an intense sorrow surfaced, rooted in her deep bond with Toma. Just then, Arnold returned, and before Arya could leave, he handed her a badge for her advancement to B rank. Soon, the group set off on the escort mission, with Arnold and Vulcan staying behind. Throughout the journey, they faced several dangers, but none were able to hinder their progress thanks to the seamless teamwork of Arya, Stella, and Toma. As night fell and camp was made, Reese approached Arya and offered her a bouquet of lilies of the valley. Curious, Stella asks if the flowers hold any special meaning, and Reese replies that they were favorites of his fiancée, Eliza. He often gathered them for her. Learning that Reese is engaged, Toma suddenly realizes why the man seems disinterested in her master. Arya then asks what he plans to do with the Earth Dragon skeleton, and Reese admits it's a valid question. He explains that a weapons dealer had already been hoarding rare resources, certain that a major conflict was on the horizon. That comment sparks Toma's memory of the demon's mention about reviving a mighty creature. Wrapping things up, Reese notes that they should arrive in Gladston by the next day and recommends they rest for the night. The group settles into sleep, but before dawn, a strange event begins to sweep through the area. Toma dashes from his tent. Trying to make sense of the strange occurrence, everything nearby is affected, except for their immediate camp. As the disturbance spreads, Arya wakes up, alarmed, but Reese calmly tells them the cargo is unharmed and assures them what they're seeing is simply a new labyrinth forming. Although few people know it, dungeons can spontaneously come into existence. Pressing forward, they move cautiously through the dense mist stirred up by the dungeon's emergence, and Reese believes they've passed through safely. Arya exhales in relief, confessing she'd love to come back and explore the dungeon someday, while Toma notes that new labyrinths are great sources of rare materials just waiting to be collected. Once they're clear of the haze, Reese turns to the group and asks if they'd like to enter, pointing out that finding a fresh dungeon is incredibly rare. He adds that it'd be even better if they were willing to sell any valuable finds to him. Excitement builds among the group, but the merchant warns them to remain alert. After all, the dungeon didn't even exist a few hours ago, and there's no telling what threats lie inside. With that in mind, as they approach the fog, Toma uses the Divine Lion's blessing to shield the party. Feeling invincible, Stella boldly charges forward, ignoring Arya's panicked calls to slow down. Unsure how to rein in the enthusiastic elf, Arya remembers a tip Vulcan once scribbled: if Stella ever got out of hand, promise her she could hug Toma after the fight. As soon as Arya says this, Stella skids to a stop and quickly rejoins the group, clearly motivated by the reward of hugging her favorite feline. But before they can regroup, they hear a mysterious feminine laugh surrounding them. A glowing orb appears and playfully asks if the adventurers are out hunting for treasure. The glowing orb signals them to follow, and Stella wastes no time, sprinting ahead without hesitation. However, the path it leads them down turns out to be a trap. Two massive apes burst forth, charging straight at the group. Without missing a beat, Stella takes point, taunting the beasts and forcing them to focus on her. One of the apes slams into her shield with a brutal headbutt, creating the perfect opening for Arya, who swiftly dispatches both creatures with clean, deadly precision. Arya commends their flawless coordination, but Stella mutters that her actions weren't entirely selfless, she did it all for Toma. As the dust settles, the sound of rustling leaves draws their attention, followed by a tiny voice attempting to feign innocence. Unconvinced, Stella demands that the hidden individuals reveal themselves or be pursued. In response, two Fey-like beings step into view, one small and the other towering. The smaller one introduces herself as Lily, a high pixie, and the larger identifies herself as Fury, a high dryad. Intrigued, Stella asks what they might taste like, prompting Arya to explain that these are forest pixies, often found in maze-like woodlands, though she admits she's never met one personally. She politely greets them, but the pair are utterly absorbed with Toma, scooping him up and showering him with gentle cuddles. Irritated by the one-sided attention, Stella attempts an attack, only to be halted by Toma's telepathic plea for calm. Stella accuses the two of leading them into danger, but Lily denies it firmly. She explains their only goal was to befriend Toma and show him the path to a hidden treasure. Fury confirms this, pointing toward a mysterious chest nestled deeper within the maze. Upon opening it, they discover a stunning flask filled with an exceptionally rare potion. Lily and Fury mention that other treasures like this are scattered throughout the area, but accessing them requires a special key located inside a hive guarded by massive, aggressive bees. No sooner is this said than the bees emerge, swarming the group. Stella ducks for cover as Toma unleashes a powerful howl. Arya follows with a sweeping strike, cleaving through the enemy swarm with a whirlwind slash. With the battle won, Fury cradles Toma in awe, amazed at his strength despite his tiny, adorable form. Lily praises the rest of the group, but Stella quickly asserts herself as the real backbone of the team. As things settle down, Arya retrieves the key from a tree branch. Lily and Fury explain that she will need it to open the door guarding the dungeon's final boss and its most valuable treasure. Arya surmises that such a place must hold extremely rare items and suggests a short rest before continuing, considering how far they've come and what may lie ahead. Seizing the moment, the pixies excitedly ask if they can accompany the group to a human settlement, revealing it's been their dream for ages. Later on, the pixies are captivated by their very first sight of a bustling city. Arya, hoping to keep them out of trouble, urges them to stick close so they don't wander off. But the pixies, utterly fascinated, immediately rush toward the first intriguing aroma they catch on the breeze. Annoyed, Arya has to rein them in, warning that wandering too far might get them captured, since fairies are extremely rare and highly sought after. Finally, Arya decides it's time to visit Rhee's shop and see what interesting finds await them along the way. But before they can leave, she spots the pixies once again darting off, this time grabbing a bowl of human food from a nearby vendor. Seeing this, Stella insists she needs to try the dish too, and Arya quickly reassures the merchant that she'll pay for it, noticing his rising irritation. With that settled, Fairy finally gets to taste the unfamiliar food for the first time. A short while later, the group heads to Rhee's to have a rare item they retrieved from the labyrinth properly evaluated. Rhee's is ecstatic to discover that the item is the Tear of Truth, a liquid said to prevent anyone who drinks it from telling a lie. The merchant guesses that obtaining such a powerful relic must have been quite the challenge, and just as Arya begins to recount the tale, the pixies come tumbling into the room, acting like mischievous little kids. Upon seeing them, Rhee's unexpectedly becomes emotional and apologizes, explaining that he's never actually seen pixies before. He then abruptly remembers another task he forgot to handle and excuses himself without further detail. That night, as everyone winds down, Stella sidles up to Toma, eager to claim her promised reward, a heartfelt hug, only to be swatted away by the cat. Even so, Arya agrees Stella did an excellent job and gently asks Toma to give her one hug, which he reluctantly does. In that moment, Stella can hardly believe it's finally happening. She pauses, unsure how to accept the prize she's longed for. Slowly, she pets the tiny creature before excitedly leaning in to nuzzle his fluffy belly. Elsewhere, Vulcan rejoins the team after finishing her errands in town, only to be taken off guard when a skeleton abruptly rises from the earth. But the creature isn't particularly threatening, so she simply smashes it with her hammer. Still, as Abel watches, a wave of strange purple energy surrounds the shattered remains, leaving Vulcan puzzled by the eerie sight. At the same time, the escort group unlocks the boss room's door and steps inside. The fairies stay behind, cheering them on enthusiastically. On the other side, the party is greeted by a B-rank torrent dragon that instantly launches a barrage of powerful magical blasts, pounding relentlessly against Stella's shield. Still, Stella doesn't retreat. Determined, she charges in and slams her shield into the dragon, managing to divert its focus. Arya takes the chance to launch a side attack, but the dragon anticipates the move and lashes out with its tail. Stella reacts in time, sprinting to block the attack with her shield, guarding Arya. Focused on distracting the creature, she assures her allies that she can handle it and encourages them to finish the fight quickly, all the while throwing verbal jabs at the dragon to keep it riled. Toma watches in awe, amazed at what Stella has achieved with the team in such little time. Once more, the tank notes that she's someone who takes action and delivers results. As the torrent dragon swipes at her with its claw, Stella catches the limb, forcing an opening in its defense, one Toma instantly recognizes as the moment to strike. Without hesitation, he fires off his flame howling and restrains the creature with his tentacles. In that exact moment, Arya speeds in and slashes its throat with precision, landing a deadly blow that finishes the fight and secures their first major win. Toma rejoices at their victory, showering his master with praise, while Stella grins, declaring they couldn't have won without her. Not long after, the group finds a treasure chest containing 2 scrolls. Upon activation, the scrolls release a strong surge of energy into Arya, granting her a lost technique known as Sacred Blade. With this newfound power, the team heads back to the labyrinth forest in hopes of reuniting with the Pixies, only to discover that both are missing. Concern growing, Toma rushes toward the empty food bowl the fairy once held, fearing something may have gone wrong. Elsewhere, in his office, Rhys rings a small bell and muses that a significant event is on the horizon. His gaze drifts to a portrait of his late fiancée, Eliza. At the same time, the group journeys home through the forest, unease growing with each step, still clueless about the Pixies' fate. Troubled, they finally arrive back in the city where Stella and Arya relay the entire story to Vulcan. After listening carefully, Vulcan advises them to check the tavern for more leads. Just then, a butler enters with 2 cloaked individuals, announcing that Count Gladston has come seeking Arya. As he continued speaking, it became obvious that the butler was blatantly ogling the women, his gaze lingering far too long on their figures. He then made comments about Stella and Vulcan, praising their dazzling looks and calling them truly stunning, while confidently stating that the Count would be delighted to see them as well. Stella, thrown off by his insinuation, gave a vague response, while Arya flatly stated that they were currently busy, though they would stop by to meet the Count later, regardless of who he even was. The butler then explained that disregarding the Count's direct request was not taken lightly and could have consequences. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Vulcan promptly agreed that they would get ready. Without delay, the butler exited, waiting for them in a carriage stationed outside. Once he left, Stella questioned the need to meet with such a peculiar man, especially when their primary goal was to find the fairies. Vulcan replied that she had caught wind of some unsettling tales about Count Gladston. While riding in the carriage, Vulcan revealed that this noble had a dark reputation for abducting women. Concerned, Stella asked if it was possible he had captured Lily and the fairy. Vulcan nodded, explaining that this was the very reason they had no choice but to follow the Count's servant. Before long, they reached the Count's estate. The butler walked up to the grand door, knocking firmly to announce their arrival. The Count called them in, and the moment he saw them seated on his lavish sofa, he immediately declared that he had never seen such breathtaking women. Vulcan offered a polite thanks for his welcome, with Arya also showing appreciation. Then, seemingly struck with an idea, the Count snapped his fingers and proposed they become more than just acquaintances, suggesting, rather bluntly, that they become his lovers. The vile man proudly claimed that no one had ever regretted accepting such an offer, while Thomas silently observed with disdain, realizing that this man was every bit as disgusting as the rumors had described. Just then, the butler returned, carefully carrying a tea set and began pouring cups for each guest. Count Gladston excitedly urged them to drink, but the women hesitated, suspicious of what might be in the tea. Vulcan gently declined, saying she wasn't thirsty, but the Count insisted they at least try a taste. As Arya lifted the cup to her lips, the Count looked on in anticipation. But before she could drink, Toma activated the Lion King's blessing, shielding his companions and ensuring their bodies would remain protected. Soon after, the 3 of them took cautious sips. To the Count's surprise, their faces lit up with real enjoyment, and they even asked for second helpings. Bewildered, the Count turned to his butler and demanded to know why none of the women had succumbed to the brew's intended effects. Leaning closer, the servant admits he's uncertain, but assures them he'll prepare an even more potent mixture next time. As the tension intensifies, Stella suddenly slams her hand on the table and demands to know the whereabouts of Lily and Fairy. Without pause, she grabs the Count by the collar, but he stubbornly repeats that he has no idea where they are. Through telepathy, Toma urges her to stand down, and though visibly annoyed, she lets go of him in an effort to avoid escalating things further. Trying to ease the moment, Arya apologizes on her friend's behalf. But the atmosphere takes a darker turn when the Count's expression hardens. He accuses them of being possessed by evil spirits inhabiting female bodies. He claims that only his family's sacred cleansing ritual can purify them, which begins by having them detained immediately. Responding to a signal, the butler claps sharply, summoning a squad of masked enforcers who surround the group. With a cold laugh, Stella mocks their luck and prepares to fight. However, Toma once again warns her through telepathy that this isn't the right time to strike. While Arya and Vulcan attempt to calm the Count and insist they mean no harm, a guard bursts in with shocking news: a horde of undead has breached the city, leaving destruction behind and heading straight for the estate. Panicked, Count Gladston begins barking orders for evacuation, but the butler cuts in, warning that the roads are far too perilous now. He advises the Count to seek shelter on the upper floors for his own safety. Wasting no time, the Count commands his servants to protect him before fleeing upstairs. The butler then asks what should be done with the women, but the rotund noble simply scoffs and retreats with his men. With the room cleared, Arya expresses her concern for the people outside and insists they can't just sit by. The others nod in agreement, their resolve firm. Beyond the walls, pandemonium unfolds as skeletal monstrosities terrorize the streets, forcing frightened civilians to flee. Arya and Vulcan take the lead, guiding the townspeople toward the hills for safety. Once secure, the quick-thinking elf leaps into combat beside Toma. Not one to stay behind, Stella barrels into the fray, her shield smashing through bone with ease. She finds the enemies too brittle to pose a real threat. Nearby, a lone skeleton lunges for a crying child, but Vulcan intervenes, shattering it instantly and lifting the girl onto her back to get her to safety. After regrouping, Vulcan grimly notes that a frontal assault won't stop the endless wave. They need to find and eliminate the force controlling them. Arya agrees and suggests they split up to cover more ground. Vulcan remains behind to guide the townspeople to safety and keep the child protected, while Arya, Stella, and Toma head out to locate and eliminate the mage behind the skeleton invasion. Elsewhere, on a nearby rooftop, the Count takes cover with his butler and a loyal soldier. The main group, drawn by the ominous chime of a bell echoing from Rhys' mansion, arrives to face him head-on. Rhys proclaims that his actions are fueled by revenge, blaming Count Gladston for the loss of his beloved Eliza. Consumed by rage, he summons an even greater horde of skeletons. Toma swiftly identifies him as a necromancer. Rhys then admits that his power was once limited, barely able to animate 2 skeletons. But after forming a pact with the Pixies Lily and Fairy, his ability skyrocketed. With a theatrical gesture, he unveils the 2 Pixies concealed under his robe. Disgusted by the sight, Toma accuses him of using the bell as a means to manipulate the fairies and implies that the arrow he wields may play a role in this dark plan. As it turns out, the arrow allows Rhys to siphon mana directly from Lily and Fairy, channeling their immense energy to raise an overwhelming army. He gloats that Fairykind holds incredible mana, and through their energy, he triggered an explosion that demolished his own mansion, revealing the bones of an earth dragon beneath, which he had long sought. With a sneer, he sarcastically thanks the heroes, stating none of this would have been possible without their meddling. Then, in a disturbing ritual, Rhys positions himself within the ribcage of the enormous dragon skeleton, becoming its new core. Outraged by the defilement of her comrade, Stella rushes forward, slicing her way through the skeletal swarm, only to be struck aside by the dragon's massive claw. Toma retaliates instantly with his ether howl, blasting apart its bony tail, but to their horror, the shattered bones reassemble almost instantly. Reacting quickly, Arya activates her Holy Blade technique. The divine attack finally lands, searing the dragon with sacred energy, but it comes at a grave cost, draining her mana to dangerous levels and weakening her physically. Seeing her condition, Toma laments his inability to assume his behemoth form and warns Stella that Arya won't be able to use the move again so soon. Knowing they need time to free Lily and Fairy, Stella charges forward with her shield, bulldozing through the skeletal throng to reach the dragon, while Toma bolts in the same direction, flying through the path of the arrow to back her up. Meanwhile, as the townsfolk construct barricades to defend against the undead, Vulcan returns, refusing to let them face the crisis alone. The young girl leaves his side and runs to her mother as Vulcan drags his massive hammer across the ground, carving a line that ignites into a roaring wall of fire, stopping the enemy advance in its tracks. Meanwhile, switching the spotlight to Toma, he unleashes a fiery roar, delivering a pinpoint strike against his foe. Amidst the chaos, Stella ends up trapped beneath one of the dragon's massive feet. Drawing upon her formidable strength, she braces with her shield and strains upward, unwilling to be beaten by what she considers nothing more than a lifeless shell. Taking advantage of the distraction, Toma extends his tentacles, swiftly pulling Lily and Fairy to safety, clearing the way for Arya to prepare her decisive attack on Rhys. As Arya channels her energy, Stella activates her traction technique to reinforce her stance, then breaks free from the crushing weight. In one fluid, powerful motion, she cleaves off the beast's left arm. Toma then intensifies the assault with his blazing blade, cutting deep into the creature, while Arya drives her sanctified sword into its center for a critical strike. In a flash, the monster disintegrates into nothingness, leaving Rhys collapsed and broken, consumed by the realization that his vendetta had vanished like smoke. Stepping forward, Arya insists that the person lying before them is not truly Rhys, and that Eliza would never have supported his revenge. Yet, the man refuses to let go of his hatred toward Count Gladston, and rings his bell once again, determined to summon his skeletal forces for one final battle. But this time, only a single skeleton answers the call. It slowly approaches, reaching for his hand, and as it makes contact, it transforms into Eliza's familiar figure. They are suddenly surrounded by the illusion of a peaceful, endless meadow. With a serene smile, Eliza gently tells him that he always lets his sorrow cloud his judgment. Crushed by guilt, Rhys breaks down in tears, begging her forgiveness and admitting that he was to blame for everything. Eliza, calm yet resolute, tells him he must face the consequences of his actions, even though the journey to redemption will be long and painful. Then, with a final smile, she fades away, taking the enchanted bell with her, and with it, the skeletal horde vanishes, as their existence had depended on its power. Back in the city, Vulcan stares in disbelief as the undead forces dissolve, while Count Gladston quakes with fear, watching the last of the creatures disappear across the rooftops. The next morning, the city square was packed to capacity, the citizens gathered for an execution. Inside a nearby tent, the Count's butler observed that this was an ideal moment for the chief to assert his dominance. Just then, Arya entered, carrying a jug of tea. With practiced elegance, she poured a cup and handed it to Gladston, who took a sip and smiled, clearly pleased with the luxurious taste. Tamek commented that the tea was indeed something special. Moments later, the Count made his way to the guillotine, where Rhys waited silently, prepared to accept his fate. Just before the execution could commence, Count Gladston addressed the gathered citizens and introduced the true saviors of their city, Arya, Stella, and Vulcan. He then revealed the identity of the man behind the devastation tormenting Gladston's people, sentencing him to death while pondering aloud what might have driven him to such merciless acts. Rhys stepped forward, revealing that his actions had been driven by a deep thirst for revenge following the tragic loss of his beloved fiancée. In a shocking turn of events, Gladston confessed openly to having murdered Eliza himself, claiming that revealing this earlier would have compromised the delicate web of plans he had orchestrated. His admission stunned the audience, and in that moment, the Count realized he had let slip far too much. Holding a strange potion in her hand, Arya asked him whether he had any knowledge of the women who had mysteriously disappeared from the city. Caught off guard by the question, Gladston crumbled and admitted to being behind all of the disappearances. Panic and confusion swept through the gathering as he demanded to know what had just happened, only for the composed elf to explain that she had added a few drops of a powerful truth serum into his tea, compelling him to spill his darkest sins in front of everyone. Outraged by the confessions, especially as the missing women were beloved citizens, the crowd turned on him, furious and ready to see justice delivered. Amid the uproar, Rhys sincerely thanked the heroines for their help and support. In the days that followed, the fallout of that chaotic day unfolded. Gladston was stripped of his noble title and sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars for his crimes. Rhys, spared from execution, received a prison sentence as well, bringing a sorrowful close to one of the city's darkest chapters. The following morning, the group embarked on their journey by carriage. During the ride, Stella, feeling a bit envious, casually suggested that the fairy might consider returning to the woods. Still perched atop Toma like a mount, Lily chose to stay alongside the elemental feline, while Fairy offered heartfelt thanks for the rescue. While gazing out the window, Arya and the others quietly admired the seaside scenery, each lost in their own thoughts. Brimming with energy, Vulcan looked forward to reaching Ruin, and Arya reminded her cherished companion that they were heading back to where everything first began. Upon arriving at the guild, Arnold welcomed them warmly with a tight hug, eager to hear all about their adventures in Gladston. The guild was abuzz with excitement over Arya's victory against the undead dragon, an achievement that earned her the honorary title of heroine. To commemorate the occasion, Arnold handed her a silver adventurer's badge, officially promoting her to rank A, while Stella received a promotion to rank B. Amid the celebration, Arya asked about Vulcan's rank, and Arnold explained she had refused an upgrade, preferring her life as a dedicated blacksmith. A festive gathering followed to celebrate the hero's return, during which Arnold proudly announced a generous gift from Gladston, a 10-year supply of preserved fruit. The girls were stunned by the quantity, while Toma fretted over where they could possibly keep it all. Arya suggested Vulcan manage the storage, given her space, but Vulcan quickly noted her inventory was already packed with gear and materials. Seeing an opportunity, Arnold proposed that it might be time for the elf to have her own place, financed by the reward from their recent mission. With confidence in her abilities, Arnold assured them she could easily afford a comfortable home. Taking a moment to sip from her mug, Arya agreed that it was time to make a big decision, investing in a home where everyone could live happily together. She looked to Toma for his opinion, and though he remained quiet, the encouraging looks from him and the others made their support clear. The next day, they went to hand over Fist Real Estate Agency in the commercial district. When asked about their dream home, Stella wished for a kitchen fit for a chef, while Lily and Ferry requested plenty of greenery. A garden was essential. Meanwhile, Arya wanted a large room, and Toma worried about the budget. The agent reassured them, claiming he had just the right place in mind, and then led them to a quiet mansion on the outskirts. It was a beautiful estate that met all their desires. The group was delighted, but there was one unusual feature that had kept the estate unsold. Rather than a traditional bath with enclosed plumbing, the home featured a luxurious open-air bathing area. To the agent's surprise, the women were overjoyed by the outdoor bath, and Arya wasted no time in making it theirs. By the time the sun began to set, the move was finally done. Lily and Ferry happily bounced on their new beds, testing the softness with giggles, while Stella was loudly boasting about finally indulging in some of her more outlandish fantasies involving Toma. Toma, meanwhile, looked back with a smirk, remembering how Stella had effortlessly carried all the belongings, her reward being nothing more than the privilege of petting him. Of course, she didn't hold back, playing with him like a squeaky toy, while Arya quietly observed the strange scene unfolding before her. The following morning, Vulcan arrived carrying 2 large pails brimming with oval lobsters, a local favorite that immediately got everyone's attention, especially Stella's. She eyed the creatures skeptically, asking if they were really tough to eat, but Vulcan just chuckled and promised they tasted amazing. That night, both Ephesid and Stella tore into the roasted meat with gusto, clearly relishing every bite. Later, the group's blacksmith ended up fast asleep, nestled beside Arya, only for Toma to squeeze himself in between them as he often did. While they slept, peculiar dreams filled their minds, Toma's especially strange, filled with flickers of elemental energy and odd visions tied to his feline nature. Though he longed to relax, Toma knew his journey wasn't over. He quietly leapt from the bed, resolved to unlock a new ability. Earlier that day, their fierce battle had ended with an overwhelming elemental explosion, and with it, Toma had awakened a third transformation, something he'd thought impossible after reaching his second. Yet anxiety stirred within him. What if he couldn't turn back into his normal cat form again? While brooding over these thoughts on the balcony, his solitude was interrupted when Stella, hearing his soft voice, came to check on him. Toma urged her to return to sleep, but she caught the troubled tone in his words and stayed. When she pressed him for the truth, he reluctantly revealed that he had tapped into a form even greater than his last. Stella's response was a storm of excitement. Her curiosity spiraled into obsession, and she began to chase him in desperation, passionately demanding he show her this new form, and in a bold frenzy, even insisted they share an intimate moment while he was transformed. The next morning, as everyone enjoyed their meal, Stella wouldn't stop pestering him through telepathy, her frantic requests echoing in his mind. After breakfast, Lily and Fairy brought up the idea of expanding the garden, and Arya was quick to support it, fondly remembering the rich greenery of her own homeland. She offered to find a skilled gardener in the afternoon, but Lily and Fairy insisted they do it themselves. Toma watched with disbelief as the two of them performed a ritual. They sang, drummed, and invoked the spirit of spring. In mere seconds, a massive tree sprouted in the middle of the yard. But Vulcan rushed outside in panic. It wasn't just any tree. What had grown was a world tree, a mythic colossus whose roots absorbed rare minerals from deep underground. Fairy was soon tasked with planting several ordinary trees around the world tree to help conceal it, as attracting too much attention could be dangerous. Meanwhile, the resulting surge of energy from the earlier disturbance caused a spring of life to emerge in the yard, a magical fountain believed to cure any wound or ailment. Vulcan expressed concern that tending to the garden could become a burden if left unchecked, but Lily insisted that the spring did wonders for the skin. With a sigh, Vulcan let the topic go, though unease still lingered in her thoughts. Inside the house, Vulcan and Arya discussed the possible dangers ahead. They mentioned how beings like Lily and Fairy were highly sought after for their unique abilities, making them potential targets for capture. The idea alone left both fairies visibly shaken, while Toma curiously asked how Vulcan had come to know so much. When the topic turned to rare resources, Vulcan brought up Orkokum and its steep market value. Arya replied that only top-tier artifact smiths, a title granted by the state, were allowed to forge it. Toma, somewhat disappointed, observed that Vulcan seemed content staying where she was, showing little desire to climb higher. At that moment, Arnold stormed in with alarming news. A powerful creature had surfaced on the first level of the ruins dungeon and had already taken many lives. The group decided to respond immediately, though the fairies chose to remain behind, fearing their involvement might put them in danger. However, seeing the uncertainty in Arya's expression, Toma gave a bold meow and stood tall, signaling his readiness to protect the team. Arya couldn't quite read Toma's exact thoughts, but she sensed that he wanted everyone to take part in the mission. With renewed determination, the group moved out. Despite initial hesitation, Lily and Fairy joined the expedition, equipped with customized gear crafted by Vulcan for extra safety. At the dungeon's threshold, the team encountered a low-tier goblin accompanied by an unexpectedly strong white-class hobgoblin. Ready to make their mark, Lily launched a focused fairy shot that struck the goblin square in the forehead, while Fairy transformed a branch into a flexible whip, lashing the hobgoblin with practiced ease. Their teamwork earned praise from the group. Watching them in action, Toma acknowledged their growing skill and potential in coordinated mid-range combat. Although they won quickly, a deep, unsettling roar echoed through the dungeon. Vulcan guessed it might belong to a minotaur. Arya was skeptical, thinking such a beast wouldn't appear this early, but Stella noted an unusual depth of dread in the sound. Delving further into the twisting dungeon passages, the group stumbled upon an A-class troll devouring its recent kills, including the very minotaur they had feared. As they crept closer, a loud, frightened scream rang out. Arya turned to Toma and asked him to stay back so she could see how the others performed in a real encounter. Lily and Fairy prepared a trap, but Lily's enchanted shot couldn't pierce the troll's thick skin. Fairy followed up with her whip-like branch, slashing the beast and drawing blood, though it began regenerating quickly and soon spotted their location. The massive troll retaliated with a heavy swing of its club, but Stella stepped in and blocked the strike with her shield. Vulcan seized the moment and slammed her hammer into the troll's foot, causing it to roar in pain, while Arya darted forward, striking with a series of rapid blows. At Stella's direction, Lily aimed at the troll's eye with another fairy bullet, landing a critical hit that disrupted its defense. Taking advantage of the opening, Stella drove her blade into its chest, but the monster's resilience held strong. Sensing its weakening state, Vulcan gave Arya a nod, prompting her to deliver a finishing triple slash with her sacred sword, finally felling the troll. Afterward, Stella, once a lone warrior, admitted that working together had its advantages, while Arya encouraged the group to inform Arnold of their success. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, a scout reported troubling news to the king. Monsters were growing increasingly hostile, likely summoned by demonic forces. Elsewhere, a messenger alerted the famed swordmaster Alicia that their time was nearly up, to which she solemnly replied that the destined moment had come. Back with the group, Arnold announced that they had received a summons from the Emperor for a formal audience. Arya, feeling unworthy, voiced her doubts, but Arnold offered reassuring words. Vulcan backed his encouragement, though an uneasy feeling lingered with her. The next day, they began their journey to the capital, spending several days traveling before finally reaching their destination. Upon arrival, palace guards greeted and promptly escorted them inside. While most of the party was filled with anticipation at meeting the Emperor, Vulcan remained quiet and thoughtful. In the throne room, they met the Emperor of Gile and his top knight, Julius. Arya was surprised to learn the Emperor already knew Vulcan's name, an indication of her importance. Julius explained that during the Ragnarok conflict against the demons, Vulcan had played a crucial role and was celebrated as a legendary figure. Though granted the title of artifact smith, Vulcan admitted she chose instead to live as a humble blacksmith. Suddenly, a portal opened, and out emerged Beelzebub, a sacred demon lord who had allied with humanity. When Arya reacted anxiously to his presence, Beelzebub interrupted her by reading her thoughts, earning a stern warning from Julius about proper conduct. Beelzebub then revealed the grave reason for their assembly. The Empire faced an imminent threat from a powerful demonic faction known as the Four Fiends, whose goal was to revive Mammon, one of the 7 supreme demon lords, and unleash a full-scale demon army. Tima still remembers his previous encounter with a demon vividly, fully aware of how dangerous things can become. In the end, everyone in the group agrees to join forces with the Emperor. Appreciative of their decision, the Emperor personally expresses his thanks, and the military campaign kicks off, starting with the region of Vulcan. Julius assigns Vulcan the task of crafting high-level artifact weapons and ensures she receives every resource she needs. He then turns to the others, instructing them to push their training further. The fairies are sent to develop their powers under Beelzebub's guidance, while Stella continues sharpening her abilities directly with Julius. As for Arya, Julius has a different plan. He leads her to a secluded mansion, home to a renowned mage. Suddenly, a voluptuous blonde elf in maid attire bursts onto the scene. Arya is instantly emotional, recognizing her as Alicia, the sword mage who once saved her. Alicia too remembers that fateful rescue. When Arya introduces Tima as her elemental feline partner, Alicia raises an eyebrow, unconvinced. She insists someone else should be mentoring Arya. But once Arya admits it's been her dream to be trained by Alicia, the sword mage agrees to take her on. The training begins. Arya draws her twin sacred blades with focus, while Alicia casually unsheaths a simple wooden sword. But the sheer pressure of Alicia's spiritual energy is enough to make Arya flinch, even imagining herself being struck. Determined, Arya launches an all-out assault. Alicia dodges with ease, then declares, smiling, that Arya has passed the test, because only the fearless are worthy of learning from her. Elsewhere, Vulcan is busy creating legendary-grade artifacts, stunning even the most skilled smiths. Meanwhile, the fairies are deep in study under Beelzebub's strict regime. The demon senses the tremendous mana inside each of them. Not far off, Stella engages in combat with Julius, who doesn't seem to be giving it his all. Despite her potent dragonborn strength, Julius knocks Stella down easily, chiding her for not thinking strategically. Back with Arya, Alicia signals it's time for a break. Just then, Vulcan appears and hugs Alicia like a long-lost friend. When Arya asks about their close relationship, Alicia explains that they met when her mentor, the Great Mage, took her under his wing. Moments later, Alicia begins acting oddly, going on and on about the Great Mage's magnificence, even squealing a bit in admiration, before dragging Arya off to share more juicy details while relaxing in the bath. Eventually, they all share a communal bath. Then, out of the blue, Beelzebub drops a bombshell. She and Alicia are both married to the Great Mage, stunning everyone in the room. Stella storms in right after, boldly claiming she wants the same with Toma. A heated argument breaks out between the girls over who should be the first to claim Toma's cucumber. That night, they dine on hamburger steak prepared by Alicia, who says she learned the recipe from the Great Mage, a mysterious man from a forgotten place called Japan. That night, while the others rested soundly, Toma wandered alone in thought, until Alicia silently appeared beside him. Speaking gently, she asked him to look after the group when the moment came. Then, with a faint smile, she revealed that she had known all along about his true identity as a behemoth. Toma was stunned, realizing she deliberately kept her silence until now. By the following day, training was back in full swing. During Stella's sparring match, Julius spotted something strange. Right beneath him lay a clutch of eggs. That's when it dawned on him that Stella had been instinctively shielding them through the battle. He apologized for overlooking it. Then he told her that Arya needed a motivation to grow stronger, but unlike Arya, Stella didn't need any of that, because she was already incredibly powerful. Stella couldn't quite accept it, but Julius reassured her. He said her ability to act without hesitation, placing herself in danger to shield others, was proof of real strength. Only the truly powerful could do that, and he reminded her to never forget it. After training ended, it was clear that everyone had managed to grasp their new abilities, except Arya, who was still having a tough time. Frustrated, Arya pleaded with Alicia to continue teaching her so she could master the ability like the others. But before anything more could happen, Beelzebub arrived, bringing bad news: the training had officially concluded. Back at the royal quarters, Beelzebub explained that 4 dangerous fiends had appeared in separate regions. 2 of them were already being confronted, while the remaining 2 would be their team's mission. One had been sighted in Alicia's birthplace. Though she'd long stepped away from battle, Alicia didn't hesitate to accept the call to defend her homeland. Beelzebub then disclosed that the final fiend had surfaced in Ruin, a region disturbingly near Arya's family home. Despite the grim news, Arya felt resolute. She proclaimed with determination that they would defeat the demons and protect what mattered. Soon after, the team reached the ancient maze where one of the fiends was said to dwell. With reinforcements from an allied squad, they entered the depths. The opening halls were swarming with weak beasts, but after all the intense training they'd gone through, Arya and her allies were more than ready to unleash their skills and try out Vulcan's masterfully made gear. Arya slashed with elegant control using her blessed swords. Stella stood firm as an unshakable shield. The fairies unleashed magical bursts, and together they crushed the lesser creatures with ease. As they pushed deeper, stronger enemies began to appear. At this point, the backup team directed Julius and Arya's squad to focus entirely on the primary fiends, promising to take care of the smaller threats. With unwavering resolve, the heroes advanced, eventually reaching a massive, broken door. As Stella's heightened dragon instinct signaled looming danger, Thomas steps forward to guard the group, offering extra protection as they venture further. Deep inside, they come face to face with Visago, one of the infamous fur fiends, who instantly senses their heroic presence from afar. With a cold command, he summons 2 terrifying creatures, Cyclops and Orthros, tasking them with killing the heroes while he escapes to the demon realm. But before Visago can retreat, Julius intervenes, cutting him off and stating firmly that the summoned beasts are for the others to deal with, Visago is his alone. The clash begins with intensity. Toma and Arya take on Orthros, while Stella and the rest concentrate on battling Cyclops. But Visago proves to be far beyond Julius's strength. With a single, crushing blow of dark sorcery, Julius is knocked unconscious. Seizing the moment, Visago empowers his summoned beasts even more, making them fiercer than ever, and then disappears into the demon realm, leaving his monsters to finish the job. As the team is pushed to its limits, Thomas sees his loyal elf master in mortal danger, and is forced to unleash his third and most powerful behemoth form. Elsewhere, in a different part of the labyrinth, Alicia easily wipes out a pack of enemies before stumbling upon another of the 4 fiends, soaking calmly in a bath with no regard for danger. Alicia instantly recognizes this demon, one she defeated long ago, and prepares for combat. The fiend arrogantly claims Alicia stands no chance, then shifts into a dragon. Unfazed, Alicia cuts off the creature's head in one precise strike, ending the battle in moments. Back with Toma, everyone watches in awe as he transforms. But instead of fear, they see him as a divine guardian, an unstoppable force of nature. Realizing they cannot match his power, the monsters willingly drain their own life force to try and destroy him. Orthros bombards Toma with infernal flames, forcing him to defend himself and leaving him exposed. Cyclops sees an opening and charges in with a deadly strike that could seal Toma's fate. But at the final moment, Stella steps forward, raising her mighty shield. Despite Vulcan's dire warning that the move could kill her, Stella accepts her fate without hesitation. Channeling her full dragonic essence, she glances at each of her companions with affection and declares her love for them all. She remembers her isolated past as a dragon trapped in shadow, until Toma ended her life, which allowed her rebirth as a human, bringing her the most joyful days she has ever known with him and the others. Back in the current moment, as the Cyclops strike finally lands, she braces against it with her shield, gradually faltering under the force. On the sidelines, Iria can't bear to watch her friend perish, and awakens a hidden armor, an extraordinary ability that cleanses the battlefield and eradicates their enemies. With the danger gone, the group rejoices in their hard-fought triumph, but Thomas suddenly senses his mana spiraling wildly. In a blink, he shrinks back into his tiny cat form and topples forward, right onto Iria's chest. Moved by the moment, Iria clutches Stella in a heartfelt embrace, holding Toma nestled between their generous busts, both of them deeply stirred by the sight. Elsewhere, Visago, the wicked force behind the recent havoc, becomes aware that his beasts have been wiped out. Though stunned that mortals could pull off such a victory, he refuses to accept defeat and begins to scheme anew. Back at the palace, the Emperor praises the heroes for their success but grimly shares a dire revelation. The prophecy foretells Visago leading an army of darkness to the elven domain. Iria, unwavering and clear-eyed, suspects Visago's real objective is the Philosopher's Stone. She confirms her fears, explaining that the villain intends to use it to revive the Demon King. Not willing to let that future unfold, Iria and her loyal allies make a vow to travel to the Elven lands and stop Visago's ambition before it's too late. As they travel onward, Arya finds herself reflecting on the grim times when demons laid waste to her homeland, Lumins. A wave of unease washes over her as she remembers how she was rescued at her lowest point by the elemental feline Leo and the wise, sword-wielding Alicia. Though those days still make her heart pound with lingering dread, Toma and the rest of the group rally beside her, promising they'll never let her face danger alone. Out of the blue, Arnold makes a grand entrance, joking that his cape makes him feel like Elsa from Frozen, even though it's obvious he's really come to see Captain Cedric. Alicia approaches Arya with a calming smile, reminding her she's no longer the timid girl of the past. She points to Arya's newly acquired skill, Excalibur, a power she's ready to unleash if it comes to that. When they finally reach Lumins, they're greeted by the majestic view of a massive, ancient tree, an age-old sentinel that Arya says has protected the elves for generations. Not long after, the elf chief, Elvin, gives Arya and her team a heartfelt welcome. He offers sincere thanks to Alicia for a past rescue, but Alicia quickly turns the discussion toward the urgent task of strengthening the village's defenses. Elvin tells them that help has arrived from nearby settlements, led by a fierce one-eyed warrior named Gyujona. Her presence immediately captures Stella's attention, and she whispers to Toma that Gyujona is clearly someone formidable. As the group passes through the village, the elves cheer joyfully, embracing Arya's return with wide smiles and open arms. The fairies, captivated by the village's charm, quietly sneak off to explore the bordering forest. There, they come face to face with a knight named Phaon and her elemental companion Leo, who firmly questions their presence. Just then, Arya and her party catch up, and Arya greets Phaon warmly, noting how much time has passed since they last saw one another. After the fairies receive a light reprimand for straying, an unexpected moment brings laughter. Toma's overwhelming energy causes Leo to flop onto his back, belly up, a rare and baffling sight for Phaon, who has always seen Leo as proud and composed. Realizing this is the same Leo who once protected Arya, Toma mimics the gesture to honor him, which leads the fairies to join the fun in good spirits. Later, Arya sits with the leaders to plan their next move. Julius voices concern over the village's ability to hold off demons, but Elvin assures everyone that their defenses are solid and that the Amazon warrior support could turn the tide. Arya, clearly caught off guard, admits she had no idea the Amazons ever organized an official squad. Elvin then shares that the group was only established the previous year, led by a captain whom Arya is quite familiar with. Much to her shock, the captain is none other than her own voluptuous mother, Leona. When Arya objects, questioning how such a shift even happened, Leoman explains that after Arya left the village, Leona realized during her training that her power was unmatched, prompting her to step away from the Amazons. Meanwhile, during the ongoing strategy session, Stella and the rest remain patiently on standby until a group of locals approaches, murmuring and asking if their strength is truly as rumored. Vulcan assures them, but Stella points out that the most formidable among them is Toma, the elegant, powerful guardian who once protected them, as Vulcan remembers. Back with Arya, Elvin escorts the party toward the Philosopher's Stone. They reach a towering sacred tree that conceals a hidden passage. Elvin instructs the Amazon fighters to hold their position outside, while the rest of the group moves inside. Alicia, however, begins to express some doubts about Gyujiona's intentions. As they approach the stone itself, the team is struck with awe at its immense presence. Elvin uses a simple stick to show that the artifact is surrounded by a strong barrier, giving the group peace of mind to focus on the looming conflict rather than the stone's safety. Later on, Arya leads her companions to her house, where Vulcan finally lays eyes on the source of Arya's inheritance. Leona cheerfully offers to prepare a large meal, but before they eat, Arya asks for a quiet moment alone with her mother. Not long after, Leona and Arya enjoy a warm, personal bath together, with Toma eventually splashing in to join them. Though the moment is intimate, Arya expresses her doubts about allowing her mother into the coming fight. Leona gently reassures her, saying she's always kept watch over Arya and trusted in her goals. She reveals that her power comes from her deep-rooted need to defend her home, something she's always done for Arya. Toma, eager to contribute, announces that he'll be Leona's protector. Leona responds with a tender caress, much to Toma's delight. Touched by the love between them, Arya agrees to let her mother fight alongside them, and they embrace warmly, while Toma, full of joy, gets to live what he calls his heavenly dream, nestled between two legendary cushions. That night, as Arya sleeps peacefully, Toma attempts to escape her gentle grip. Arya lets out playful, teasing sounds, joking that Toma's beastly form could easily give her a good smack if necessary. Meanwhile, Leona, still awake, offers sincere thanks to Toma for always being there to protect Arya. She mentions that Arya often writes about him in letters to their family, and she earnestly asks Toma to keep guarding her. Toma solemnly agrees, promising that his life is dedicated to Arya's protection. Elsewhere, a tense situation unfolds. Gyujona, plotting to betray the elves, prepares to make her move, only to be stopped by Alicia, who confronts her directly. Alicia accuses her of being a spy for the demons and, without hesitation, kills her, ending the threat before it can begin. However, neither Alicia nor the others notice Gyujona's watchful owl, which silently flies off and sends a hidden message to Visago, revealing the exact location of the Philosopher's Stone. Reacting instantly, Visago opens a rift and sends his demon army pouring into the village. The sudden invasion throws the village into chaos. Demons begin firing on the people, forcing Alicia to react quickly. She summons a magical barrier that shields them from the initial wave. As the monsters attempt to breach it, they're thrown back by the magic, falling one after another. Amid the mayhem, Julius rallies the soldiers, delivering a rousing speech that fires them up, echoing the tone of Erwin Smith's famous charge. He commands them to defend every entrance, and they spread out accordingly. Before the clash begins, Tammon casts the Lion King's blessing on his squad, strengthening them for the fight to come. The warriors then surge forward, breaking through the enemy's front line, while Vasaga lets out a mocking, triumphant laugh. The horde slams against the shield again and again. Some manage to get through, but Vulcan holds her ground. Swinging her hammer with precise, unrelenting power, she crushes every attacker in her path. Stella fights nearby, taunting the enemy by tapping her blade rhythmically on her shield, then striking with speed and deadly skill to finish off any who approach. At the same time, Lily and Ferry unleash their powerful move, the Yggdrasil shot, sending a massive blast that wipes out wave after wave of enemies. Observing the fight from afar, Arya charges into the battle with Toma at her side. She knows this is her moment to act. With blazing speed, she rushes through the field, bulldozing past the monsters and clearing a path toward the heart of the battle. Meanwhile, Toma carved a path through the enemy ranks using techniques like Stone Howl and Dragon Fangs, opening a route for their allies to advance. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Danny, Howard, Kimi, and Marietta fought side by side, holding strong against the endless tide of foes. At the same time, Arnold displayed her skill by forming sleek, icy blades that froze opponents in their tracks, his eyes gleaming with admiration for the art of ice magic. In the chaos, a demon nearly landed a blow on Arnold from behind, but Cedric arrived just in time to shield his friend. At one of the wall gates, Fjelm remained stationed with her bow, fending off waves of invaders, while Liu tackled them head-on, tearing into them with massive fangs. Nearby, Leona, the fierce leader of the Amazons, faced an entire wave of savage beasts alone. With steely resolve, she unleashed a violent shockwave that split in two mid-air, showcasing the sheer might behind her strikes. Amidst it all, Vasago maintained his arrogant grin, mocking the defenders and warning that since their resistance persists, they would soon witness his full fury. To advance the siege, Vasago summoned Ninhogg, an S-rank dragon famed for its massive wings. The dragon's enormous form cast a shadow of fear over the defenders as it ascended toward the city's magical barrier, preparing a destructive elemental assault strong enough to break it. Vasago grinned wickedly, having overwhelmed the sacred sword by exploiting every angle of attack. With a powerful blow, the mighty dragon shattered the defenses and stormed in. In retaliation, Julius archers fired a barrage of ballista bolts at Ninhogg, but the dragon deftly evaded them with surprising agility. Then, a new wave of strange magical energy swept across the city, seeping into every inch. Amid the escalating danger, the prince called for a tactical withdrawal, while Alicia worked to reinforce the magical shield, trusting that Arya and Toma would shift the battle's momentum. Before long, the determined duo entered the heart of the fight. Hoping to tip the scales, Toma morphed into his third form. High above, Vasago, perched on his dragon, scoffed at the struggling defense below. But Arya, unfazed, charged ahead on Toma, who roared his signature flame howl at Ninhogg. The dragon countered with a powerful wind blast, momentarily suppressing Toma's flames. But Toma was relentless, he adapted quickly, moving to Ninhogg's side and launching more fire howls. Still, the dragon proved nimble, dodging each one with precision. Seizing an opportunity, Vasago manipulates a portal to reposition his arm, delivering a precise blow to Toma's back that ends up taking Arya down as well. Without hesitation, Ninhogg unleashes flames at the mouth of the cave concealing the Philosopher's Stone. In a flash, Vasago appears before the legendary artifact, pride gleaming in his eyes, while Toma rushes in with all the speed he can gather. Though the moment feels victorious, Vasago slams into an invisible barrier surrounding the stone and, frustrated, commands his dragon to retrieve it and fly off. The instant the Philosopher's Stone is moved, a powerful tremor spreads throughout the village, signaling a catastrophe in motion. The ancient tree at the center of the village quakes, its leaves rustling violently, and those still fighting pause in shock as elven voices deep sorrow, sensing the natural order unraveling. Inside the crumbling cave, Arya and Toma struggle to stay upright amidst the chaos. Arya, refusing to surrender, demands that the Philosopher's Stone be returned. Toma, driven by her resolve, bolts forward through falling debris to confront Vasago directly. Vasago, undeterred, orders Ninhogg to attack once more. The dragon spews a devastating blast against the cavern wall, worsening the collapse. Amid the havoc, Arya sees her chance. Using the debris as a springboard, she propels herself onto the dragon and plunges her blade deep into Ninhogg's tail. Ninhogg manages to burst out of the cave and soar into the sky. Wasting no time, Vasago opens a gateway to the demonic realm, eager to return to King Mammon. He knows that stepping through means doom for Lumaine's village, a fate Arya is unwilling to allow. Clinging tightly to Ninhogg's tail, she refuses to be shaken off. Toma arrives just behind her, readying an attack, but quickly realizes his strike could injure Arya, who's still too close to the beast. Spotting his hesitation, Vasago smirks maliciously, delighted that Toma won't act while Arya is in harm's way, and tells Ninhogg to keep up the pressure. The dragon unleashes blast after blast until one finally connects. Arya is filled with dread, thinking the worst has come. Vasago laughs triumphantly, claiming victory even without needing his creature to intervene. But just as despair settles in, Toma bursts through the wreckage, blazing with resolve, willing to sacrifice himself to shield Arya. Down below, the villagers gaze upward in anxious silence, paralyzed by the looming threat of a demonic lord crossing into their realm. As Vago nears the portal, his cruel laughter grows louder, unaware that Arya is steadily climbing Ninhog's tail, drawing ever closer. With a smug grin, he commands her to stand aside and witness the grand reawakening of the Dark King. Yet Arya, fierce and unwavering, flatly refuses. She concedes that alone she may not prevail, but flanked by her comrades, triumph is possible. In a daring act, Arya springs from Ninhog's tail and glides through the air, leaving Vago momentarily stunned by her boldness. Sensing the opening, Toma unleashes his devastating flame howl. Ninhog retaliates instantly, blasting streams of searing fire as the two forces clash in a brutal showdown that pushes them to their absolute limits. Though Vago exudes unshakable arrogance, Toma channels his energy with such fury that he drives Ninhog's flames back. Capitalizing on the momentum, Arya swings Excalibur with staggering force, her attack so luminous that it ignites the entire battlefield in brilliance. Vago howls in resistance, insisting he won't be defeated by a girl and her feline, but it's already too late. His form begins to dissolve under their combined might. As the infernal lord crumbles, the portal collapses and his army scatters in chaos. As Arya falls from the sky, Toma dashes to catch her, ensuring she lands gently atop his back. With a breath of relief, Arya proclaims that she always believed her moment would come. Soon after, Vago's enchanted core plunges from above, and Toma quickly secures it to keep it in their possession. With the war at last concluded, the fighters erupt into celebration. Alicia and Julius look on with pride and a sense of déjà vu, watching Arya and Toma fly together, a sight echoing tales of the first hero and the revered beast. That evening, a grand banquet is held to honor their hard-earned victory and the safety of Lumin's village. During the feast, Arnold takes time to commend the heroes of the night, praising their unmatched bravery. Cedric humbly admits he wouldn't have survived even half of what Arya and Toma endured. Meanwhile, Vulcan and Howard enter a light-hearted competition over who can gulp down the most ale. To everyone's surprise, the smaller contestant outdrinks the larger, drawing laughter from those nearby. Elsewhere, the hungry Stella catches the attention of Prince Julius, who boldly offers her a place in the Imperial army, promising endless feasts as a reward. Though she hasn't yet spoken, his confident smirk suggests he already knows her answer. Still, he remarks that such overwhelming strength might never be contained by the Empire's rule. While Lily and Fairy giggle together at a nearby table, Beelzebub suddenly materializes once more, praising both the Dryad and the Fairy for their remarkable contributions. Not stopping at words, she magically summons a grand banquet upon a massive table, warmly inviting all the fairies to enjoy the feast to their heart's content. Shortly afterward, Clariel's officials formally acknowledge Arya and Toma for their valor, briefly halting the merrymaking so the crowd can applaud the now renowned pair. Beelzebub remarks how unexpected it was for a girl who once relied on scraps to fight to now be seen as irreplaceable. Meanwhile, Alicia proclaims that such feats deserve recognition, and with great ceremony, bestows upon them the titles of Sacred Blade and Sacred Beast, highlighting the harmony between sword and fang that defines their power. Arya, moved to tears, recalls how Alicia had once been the idol she admired as a child. As Arya's mother approaches to comfort her, Arya solemnly promises to honor the title for as long as she lives. The feast evolves into a joyous celebration, a tribute to the heroes who defended Lumin's village. By the next day, word has reached Ruin, where yet another celebration takes place. Toma quietly notes how swiftly tales of the battle and the demonic titan's failed attempt to resurrect Mammon have traveled. Trying to push aside that dark thought, Toma marvels at the change in his master, once a mere D-rank adventurer, now a hero admired far and wide, all because she never wavered in her mission to help others, or so he observes. Still, even in these cheerful moments, Toma knows this is only the start. Every day brings new paths, and he will continue walking them at her side. And to Toma, there's no greater joy than being the trusted feline partner of an elf whose hidden S-rank strength leaves all in awe. This marks the conclusion of the series. Don't forget to subscribe for more anime summaries.